All right, welcome to EIPIP meeting 46. So the first item listed here is discuss a standard for documenting standard track EIPs, especially ERC. So this particular item I have added from the discussion in the last EIP apprentice meeting. It's my observation that the general practice to document standard track EIP of ERC category is ERC dash what 123 or whatever it is. But this is not the case with any other standard track EIPs, not even with the core EIP. Like we don't say that core 1559, but we do say ERC 20. So I kind of looked into the EIP1, and the present EIP1 suggests that there are only two mentions where ERC category EIPs have been mentioned as ERC. But when we look into those ERC at eips.ethereum.org, those are listed as EIP. I'm giving an example here. When we look into ERC20, it's not ERC20, it's written as EIP20. And then it is listed as the same way as any other standard track EIP. So my proposal here was to treat all standard track EIPs equally and also standardize the documentation of EIP. We should have it like in a synchronous way in EIP1 and everywhere else. So curious to know what are the thoughts here.
I'm generally in favor of consistently using the terminology EIP throughout the repository, documentation, etc. We should be aware, though, that it would take a Herculean effort to convince people to stop using the ERC terminology colloquially. And so as long as we're okay with knowing that people are going to continue calling their things ERC blah, blah, instead of EIP blah, blah, I think it's fine to just have the documentation at least be consistent with EIP as a terminology.
Right. Any other thoughts?
I was just wondering if the EIP authors already know the difference between an ERC and a much more higher abstraction EIP. So isn't that sufficient for at least from the EIP author's point of view? Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, I think there is a general understanding of what ERCs are. They are basically a part of a standard track EIP. It's just that for convenience purpose, I think for convenience purpose, it is easier to refer it as ERC. So we also specify the category of it. But making that as a standard, in my opinion, would not be a good idea. So having a consistent name as EIP, it might take some time, like educating people that you should not call it as ERC20, call it EIP20. But it's a task, difficult task, but can be achieved.
Pooja, the thing is, if I look at it from an outsider's perspective, let's say I'm not an Ethereum cat herder person, I'm not in the PM group, I'm just looking from a Web3 user perspective. So it's ERC20 is more like a marketing term for me. So it makes easier for the contract developers and every developers and the users to kind of understand it rather quickly, like ERC 721, ERC20, because it's anyway focused more on the user end of the spectrum, right? Most of the core and networking EIPs are not directly being used by the user. User is majority of the times not directly even interacting. He's interacting with the wallets and the contracts that are deployed. So I think trying to make ERC into an EIP and from that perspective might be, again, I think Micah mentioned earlier, it will be a Herculean effort. But I think at least from author's point of view, let's say if an author is coming and writing an EIP that turns out to be, that goes into the ERC category, I think that should be good enough for us, right? Because is the bottleneck that that we as the maintainers having trouble figuring out what an EIP ERC is, or conveying it to the author, whether you're writing an EIP or an ERC or a subcategory of ERC? Is that the bottleneck? What is the exact problem?
I think it's just we're inconsistent right now. Like some places we refer to them as EIPs, some places we refer to them as ERCs. Again, our documentation.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So basically, ERCs are EIPs. It's just that people like to call them. Yeah, please go ahead, Michael.
Do we still plan on splitting the ERCs out into a separate repository? Anyone know?
We had a chat yesterday on the PEEP and EIP recording with the Light client on this topic. And the impression that I get is like we are still in wait and watch state. Maybe after some time when after the merge we get some clarity, should we separate it or just take out the EIPs itself and let the ERC stay there? Anything to add, Matt, here?
No, I kind of feel like, wow, I kind of feel like we're waiting a little bit too for the execution spec. I think that depending on how people want to use the execution spec is going to dictate a bit whether or not we move the ERCs to their own repository, they stay in the EIPS repository, and the EIPS process moves to a different repository, etc.
What seems to happen is that ERCs are EIPs through the whole proposal stage because they are proposals. Once they get through the last call and they're final, at that point they are an ERC. They're a standard, and people don't refer to them consistently. I don't know if we want to start labeling them ERCs once they have gotten through to final. That would be a consistent way for us to use the terminology.
I think if we think that we're going to likely eventually split out ERCs into a separate repository, I think there's probably value in just calling them ERCs and just start now. This is contrary to my argument earlier, so I'm arguing both sides of the fence here. Just because it's going to, if we try to change everything to EIP and then make it consistent throughout the repository, and then later we pull out ERCs into a separate repository, and then we have to rename everything. That can lead to even more confusion. On the flip side, if this is just for documentation, I think that it probably doesn't matter much, and we can just call them EIPs in the docs and let users call them whatever they want.
Yeah, because I think at least we can make it like an EIP1. So in EIP1, there are two mentioned, as I mentioned it earlier. We said ERC20, but when we click the link, it says EIP20 token standard. It doesn't say ERC20. So we are actually following EIP nomenclature there. And as per my understanding, as it was explained by Light Client the other day, this EIP thing is generated, process generated. It is not something that we are adding to it because of the template and all it is getting. So people know they are EIP20. So what we can do, I mean, I'm getting a general impression that what we can do is like we can update the EIP1 for now, like just call them EIP20, and educating community about that. We should start calling it as EIP, and ERC is something that we can take it on the later stage. Does anyone disagree on like we should not make the EIP1 consistent?
I'm fine with making EIP1 consistent. I would recommend against encouraging users to change the way they call them. I think that's going to be a huge headache. And like I said, if we end up splitting out the ERC repo, we'll just have to tell them to change their naming back again. For EIP1, though, I'm totally fine with just consistently using the EIP naming nomenclature. So especially like you said, since once you click the link, it takes you to a page that says EIP, not ERC. And so the easiest fix is to just, in the few places where we call it ERC, we just rename it to EIP and let users call them whatever they want.
Right. Okay. What I can do right now is I think I can create a pull request to make these specific changes in EIP1, and let's see if any other editor has any other comment on that, or if people or community comes back with any strong reaction to that, then we might want to pull it back. Otherwise, let's give it a try. If anyone has any different opinion here, please feel free to share. Okay, let's keep it that way. Moving on to the next item. It's general consensus to discourage using the issues for discussion to or the EIP number. So we have discussed it in the last meeting and a few meetings earlier. And as an action item, I was supposed to like create a pull request to change the recommendation to make sure that we are recommending people to open the discussion to thread at Fellowship of Ethereum Magician and not to the issues section. I think we have made some prior effort to change the wording, and it looks like there is no particular section where we can define the usage of GitHub issues, and people are already getting a sense of that we should be using FEM. But there was just one section where it is mentioned that EIP number, which is allocated to a proposal, can be the issue number. So what I have done is like I made a pull request, and the number is 4564 to update that section in the EIP1. So we can make sure that people should not go ahead with the issues to open a discussion tool link that can eventually be considered as the EIP number. Does this seem reasonable?
The idea here is just to continue to reinforce what we've already been doing, or take it a step further.
We are doing that, but the only place where there was a little bit of confusion, they can still use the discussion tool link in issue was the EIP number section, where it is like EIP editor can allocate EIP number based on the pull request number or the issue number. So my thought process was, if we remove that, we can use the issue section for creating EIP number. Probably no one will go and start the discussion tool link over there because there is no other recommendation or suggestion there.
Oh, I see. So you're saying just remove the text in
Yes.
that talks about where the EIP number comes from? Yeah, that's fine. That's me.
Yeah, that's a very small one-line change that is added to EIP1. The pull request suggests that. Greg Lightland, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is that generally seems okay to kind of strongly recommend that go to FEM, do not use issues for any pull request purpose, sorry, the EIP name number purpose or the discussion to purpose.
Good with me.
We've been using issues as a way to begin the discussion on an EIP and get a number for it, which is in the same series as the PRs early on. We've been doing it that way for years now, ever since I started and even before that. I don't see any need to change. It's not like we're going to run out of numbers.
We wanted to, the goal with moving people to Ethereum Magicians was to consolidate discussions on the Magicians platform, because they previously were spread out between Magicians and ETH Research and the issues in GitHub. And secondarily, to make it so we can actually use the issues section for discussing issues with the EIP's repository in the process and stuff like that. And so right now we can't really use the issues section for actual issues relating to the EIP process because it's just chock full of people discussing their EIPs and proposing ideas for EIPs. So the idea was to just get all of that over to Ethereum Magicians, which is generally a better forum for it anyways. It has, it's like the tooling I feel is slightly better for just kind of open-ended discussion.
The issue should have a link over to the Magicians right away. There'll be a little discussion on the issue, especially if that discussion causes EIP to die an early death. And other discussions happened on what used to be a Skype channel, now it's a Discord channel. But it's just the way it's worked for years, and trying to change the way something works after years is, I just don't think it's worth the bother. And it was very nice that you could start an issue and not have to wait for an editor to assign a number. It had a number immediately. You could start to refer to it by number. Instead of that issue that we've been discussing, which someday will have a number. I just don't see the point of changing a practice that works just because it causes a little inconvenience for the editors.
So do you feel do you feel that there is, if I understand correctly, you're saying that there's value in getting a number before you are ready to submit an actual draft? Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly. I'd rather clutter up the issues with things that don't become drafts in the end than clutter up the repository with drafts that die.
Well, I don't think that it's a good practice to call a proposal which is not even merged in the EIP's repository as an EIP. We should actually refer them as pull requests. And the whole idea here is like to organize the EIP standardization process and ask the user to follow the recommendation of EIP1. And as per EIP1, an author isn't supposed to pick up an EIP number. It should be on the EIP editors to allocate them, because we have seen in the past there were squatting issues because we allow, we didn't allow it. It's just that they thought that it is allowed and they started picking up the numbers of their choice. So I think it makes sense that the responsibility should be on the editors to provide the number and not on the authors. On the second thought about the issues to be the first discussion to link, if we keep that, the process continued, we were having a ton of open issues because we don't know when to close that discussion. And actually the discussion shouldn't be closed if that is related to any proposal. So to make better use of the issues section, we like in the previous meeting, we thought that let's move all the proposal related discussion to the Magician FAM forum, so we can better utilize this issues section. Moreover, we haven't seen in practice that a user who wants to discuss about a proposal will go back 5 to 6 pages down in the GitHub to pull out that issue section and start discussing. It is way more convenient on FEM.
The Magician's discussion has to point to something. If you make it point to a draft, then you start cluttering up the repo with drafts that are going to die when the discussion says, no, this is a bad idea. If you start the discussion on the issue, you just put the draft in as the first comment on the issue. It's editable, so you've got a history there. It works. It's been working for years. It's difficult to change the practice. Not everyone does it that way. It's not a requirement. It's just a common way of doing things. But the only hassle has been people who decide to keep clicking the number until they get a number they like. That's a bad thing to do. And when people do that, you scold them. But at least, let people do it. People are going to do it, and it's not worth scolding them about it or telling them not to. It works. And trying to use issues to keep track of what's happening in the repo, it doesn't work very well anyway. Just discussing them on the channel works much better.
Why do you think that there needs to be something to link back to? Why can't someone just create an Ethereum Magicians discussion link that talks about their idea and their proposal and just has the whole thing happen there? Like, why do we need an issue at all for that?
Where does the initial draft to discuss go? You want to write up something.
And you have a draft.
You want to write up something initially that's substantial enough to have a discussion. People vary. I like to write up something fairly close to an actual spec so that there's something to discuss rather than just a vague idea. And I don't want to have to make a draft in the repo for that purpose, because when the discussion is done, the upshot of the discussion may be, no, this is a bad idea. So why clutter up the repo with that? Better to just clutter an issue.
I think one of the issues of having two places for EIPs is that sometimes it's not easy to find an EIP number someone refers to. Some of these old EIPs that never made it into the repository, you try and search on eeps.ethereum.org and it's not there, and you don't think it's an EIP. And you look in the GitHub and it's not an EIP, but it's hidden somewhere in the issues, and there's no good way of navigating to that.
If it's in an issue, it's just a discussion. There's nothing really to navigate.
Well, but it has an EIP number and people are referring to it as an EIP.
Oh, I see your issue. If it never gets into the repo, it's not quite real. And
yeah,
I don't know.
I agree with that.
I see your point. I see your point, but it just doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you. As I keep saying, people have been doing this for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. So it's swimming upstream to try and change it. You can change the advice in EIP 1 so that people start doing it a different way. The problem remains where to put the initial big piece of text that you want to discuss. I prefer that be something close to a specification rather than just, I have a vague idea I'd like to discuss that might become an EIP. Go take that somewhere else if you just want to discuss vague ideas.
So why can't you just put that in the Ethereum Magicians forum? So let's say you write something that's not quite a draft, but it's close to a spec like you described. Just create a Magicians thread that just has that as the body. Yeah,
the hassle is you wind up with a discussion thread there that's difficult to link to, and you have no history if you start editing things there. But the alternative is to get things started in your own repo, but not everybody manages their own Git repo. That's a difficult thing to do, actually.
I think your point that you don't have an EIP to link to, I think is actually kind of like Matt said a minute ago. That's, to me, a selling point. Like, we don't want people linking to this as an EIP. We want to be very clear. This is not an EIP. It is not, until it makes it as a pull request that is accepted as a draft. It's not an EIP. It doesn't have a number. And so it is just an idea. And it can be a well-specified idea, but it is just an idea. And by having it not in the EIP's repo until it's an EIP helps kind of make it more clear that it's not actually an EIP, because we run into a lot of problems with people, calling things EIPs and advertising them on Twitter and whatnot. And then, it doesn't even make it to draft. And then people come by later and like, hey, what happened to that EIP? And I have to tell them
it died.
that was never an EIP.
Yeah, it died. it could get to draft, and if it dies, it's still just a dead number. As I said, we can change the advice of how we want people to do it in EIP1, but trying to enforce it is just not worth the bother.
Well, I think the process of a standardization means like whatever we are recommending, that should be for like everyone to follow, and then only we can make it a standard. And when we are talking about EIP, because that is something coming from Ethereum repository, we would like to make sure that the standard that we are providing is actually a standard. It's not just a suggestion that people start using and start calling them to be a part of Ethereum.
Yeah, I'm very disinclined to change the way that I do things. I'll tell you that, because it works very well for me. But I don't get things started on the issues until I'm almost certain I'm going to write a draft. So.
But then what about the new EIP authors that might come in the future? Because if they're coming, they need to have minimal friction in order for them to author an EIP, post a discussion, and get a consensus around that. If there is no standard process, then the friction kind of increases in that span. Does that make sense?
But the advantage of the issues is that GitHub maintains a history now. So it provides a place to edit during discussions and maintain a history of what you're doing, without involving the EIP editors until it's more substantial and you're willing to submit yourself to that process. Because the process slows things down a lot once every edit has to go through an editor. But
you can also see the edits.
I really do see the arguments on both sides. I just, it's my old psychologist coming out here saying that when you've got a social practice that's been established for years, whatever the arguments are, it's still hard to change the practice.
The thing is probably less than 10% of people create issues as their discussion threads anymore. So it's not like this is affecting a huge number of people.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Well, if ever I write another EIP, I'm still inclined to do it that way because it works very well for me.
All right, let's try. Let's try from our end to propose this to the community, and maybe we can see the response, how it works, because every time when someone new wants to document a proposal, the first recommendation is to follow EIP1. So at this point, I can just assume that whatever is there in the EIP1 is a standard that we are providing to the community to follow along. And if there are other issues that comes on the way, we can probably address in one of the future meetings.
Just a quick question.
Sorry, if you do drop the first, pre-draft, as it were, into the start of a discussion thread on magicians, does it let you keep editing it indefinitely, or does it stick some arbitrary time limit and then not let you touch it anymore?
My understanding is there is a time limit, but we are trying to assess, like cat herders are working with FEM people and trying to assess the author in case there are an issue in editing that particular proposal after a certain period of time. So that is at this point is
Pooja, I think it's referring to the Ethereum Magicians forum
right.
itself is their edit timer on it. Some forums have like you can only edit within the first 30 minutes and then you can't edit anymore. I don't know the answer to that.
That's the problem. It's where to put the text that might become a draft, but it might not. you're having this discussion, and the discussion might end up being, no, this is actually not a good EIP, so don't, you know, there's the problem of cluttering the issues, but cluttering up the drafts is a worse problem. I really don't want people submitting things as drafts just so they have a place to discuss them and a number to discuss them by.
Yeah, so I find that a compelling argument. If Ethereum Magicians does in fact have a edit timer, then that is a compelling argument that this is not a viable solution to the problem that's being described. I don't know if it has a timer or not, and the page isn't loading for me for some reason right now. Maybe my VPN or something. So
You can edit old posts on FEM. I don't know if that's because I'm a moderator.
Are you a moderator?
I'm a
I think
moderator.
I'm not a moderator, but yeah, I think I'm not, but I can't load it for reasons that are.
Working for me. I mean, not the editing part, but the Fellowship of Ethereum Magician page is definitely loading. And if I understand correct, yes, there is a timer after which a post is not editable. And in the past, we have came across certain cases where an author wants to make some change on the initial draft, but there was something that because of time period, it wasn't allowed, but we got that resolved very fast. Like one example is EIP 3675, the merge EIP. Mikhail had this issue and we worked with the team and it got solved. So we are trying to do our best in terms of communicating with EIP authors and make sure the discussion to forum should be better utilized and authors should not face any challenges over there. I'm sorry, Shashank, was there a question? I thought I saw you unmuting.
Yes. So I was wondering if it would be useful to create a different repo under the Ethereum project specifically for discussing the ideas and maybe discussions and stuff like that. Because then there is mostly no worries about allocating issue numbers and PR requests and stuff like that.
Well, FEM was brought into place for this particular purpose only. FEM is to bring all sort of discussion related to Ethereum. It need not be specific to any EIP or any proposal, but it can be related to anything that you want to talk about in Ethereum ecosystem. So my understanding is if you want to create a thread, you do not need to have a draft proposal submitted. In the first place, you can just open a thread and start discussing on any topic. It can be an idea for a proposal as well.
So it does appear that there's a edit timer on Ethereum Magician. Can we remove that? Is that something that's configurable that we can just get rid of?
I'm not sure.
There's
we might
an
have to
open
check.
source piece of software. We could make a PR if it's not configurable.
What software is being used here? Is this
Discourse?
Discourse has like 1 billion settings. I'm guessing you can adjust this. So yeah, so I do kind of agree with Greg that if we cannot, if there's an edit timer on FEM, then it does not make for a good place to have this idea phase EIP, like the pre-EIP discussion, because there is value in, as Greg described, having a place where you can type up your specification before you're ready. You're not confident enough it's going to be an EIP. You don't really want to clog up the EIP's process. You don't want to go through like the actual process of drafting a formal EIP, but you want to get feedback and you want to iterate on it. And having a place to do that is very valuable. I do agree pretty strongly with him. And right now, if there's an edit timer on FEM, that makes that a non-viable option. And so if we can remove that, then I'm back in the camp of we should be having those discussions and on FEM. If we can't remove that for some reason, then I tend to agree with Greg that FEM is not the right place.
Yeah, remember these discussions go on for years. I have EIPs and variations on EIPs that have been on the table for 5 years now. So edit timers are really a hassle.
All right. So if we can attribute it into two pieces, like one, issues to be considered for EIP number, that's number one, and number two, issues to be considered as discussion to link. So I'd be curious to know thoughts for like both section. Is there any general agreement that only the pull request number and that too by the editor should be allocated as EIP number?
No, that's the whole advantage of issues is that the numbers come from the same sequence as the PRs. So as soon as you open an issue on it, you have a number to refer to it by. And the advantage is that everything is in that repo. Everything's there. You should move the discussion to FAM pretty quickly. Not very much should happen in the initial issue. Once it's at all solid, move it over to FAM and simply have the discussions too link to the issue until you're ready to make a draft of it. But if people don't have a number to refer to, it's just difficult to get it out into the community for discussion. People need a number. And once they have a number, then they know, oh, the first place to look is in the issues, and they'll probably find it under that number. I don't know. It works. I hate to, the only way it's broken is that we get a whole bunch of issues. We can't use issues the way they're usually used in a repo, but we've never used them that way. They don't even work that well in other repos. So we have these discussions on our, on our Discord threads, and that's been working for a long time. So we're trying to solve a problem that just isn't a big enough problem to worry about.
Well, I think in the past we have made some effort to move the discussion link towards the FEM, and I don't know, haven't heard any like strong resistance so far, but I'm completely open to the like a reconsideration of making use of issue, though I see there are more downsides of using issues as discussion to link than the advantage that it provides. And talking about the serial number, once the pull request is there, it is from the same sequence of the issue. So I don't see there is much of a difference of making pull request number as an issue number, but I strongly recommend that this is something that needs to be provided by EIP editor. That's number one. And number two, we shouldn't call a proposal as an EIP unless it is merged in the eips.ethereum.org in the form of draft at least. Because in the past, we have seen a lot of proposals which are implemented in projects. They call that they have implemented an Ethereum proposal, but that Ethereum proposal does not exist in Ethereum repository. Maybe this is something like might require a longer discussion or maybe a bigger forum discussion. And we have like 15 minutes just left. So if anyone has any final comment, thoughts to share, and then we can move on with the rest of the topics.
Pooja, if I understand correctly, you're saying that an EIP author is trying to submit a pre-draft, not even draft, it's a pre-draft, right? But the number should be only allotted after when? I'm unable to kind of grasp that point. When should the number be allotted? Yeah.
The number should be allotted only if the proposal is ready to be submitted as draft, because number comes as the second stage. There should be a draft that needs to be submitted at Ethereum GitHub repository as a form of pull request before any number can be allocated to that proposal.
So then, so for easy identification, what would be a prefix or a suffix that we can give to that pre-draft,
So
or should not give
for
anything?
for pre-drafts, you really should not be like, you should be soliciting people for feedback on your ideas and your thoughts, but you should not be telling people, hey, I have a thing that is a standard. You do not have a standard until you have a final EIP. And so the thing we're trying to discourage is this pattern that people have gotten into where they create an issue or create a PR that never gets merged. And then they go out and they tell everybody, hey, I created an EIP, everybody should go implement this standard. And it is not a standard. It is just an idea, and it might be a good idea, and it might be an idea that eventually becomes a standard. But it's not something that we want to incentivize and encourage and facilitate people sharing around. Like if you're ready to get broader feedback, then you should create a draft and get it into the EIP process. Like start in the process so you get a number, you can start sharing your ideas with people and spamming it to a broader audience. If you just want to get a small pool of people to just look at your thing, then Ethereum Magician's thread or whatever that just has your idea is a great place to link to.
I was asking actually in the perspective of, let's say, if Alita is trying to build a bot on top of a pre-draft. So is there a category that these pre-drafts can go into, so some kind of automation could be done later on, or easy for identifying within the project management community from that perspective? I understand your point, Mike. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a category that we can give it to so that we can simply identify using a prefix or something like that.
I don't think so, because draft is that thing. Like draft is the first step. Like the very first step in creating an EIP is create a draft. The requirements are pretty slim. You just basically need to make sure it's formatted right. So make sure the front matter's there, make sure you have the right sections, make sure you follow the rules. But that's it. Like you don't, like I've had people submit EIPs as drafts where the body is almost entirely like TBD, like just it's kind of stubbed out. They have like a couple of vague ideas in there, and I've let them through. And because, like I said, that's the first step. As soon as you're ready to create an EIP, just go create a draft. Again, if you're like Greg and you want to discuss it beforehand, that's fine as well, and I'm totally okay with that. But if you're looking to get started on the process itself, the first step is to create a draft, and that is meant to be the
GitHub now does have this sort of draft PR idea, which is sort of a pre-draft. You can put it up there and it may never be merged. It can't be merged. That sort of helps. I actually don't want to see these totally empty drafts go in, if that really does clutter things up. I just don't mind the clutter in issues. I don't care if there's a million issues that never get closed. I just don't care. We're not going to run out of numbers.
I think I can be convinced to set the bar slightly higher for draft than what I have right now. I'm not super passionate about having the bar be very low.
I don't want the drafts cluttered up. That's a repo. And if you get a lot of drafts in there that are just dead,
well, with the help of this EIP bot, we may not be having a lot of draft dead. It would be moved to stagnant if the author is not around to either champion or push the proposal. So if someone just showed up to submit the first draft and is gone, MIA, the bot is helping us a lot, making some noise after 6 months. So you want to continue the proposal, come back, give feedback or push the proposal. If you don't want, it will be moved to stagnant. So that way we may not be having ton of open pull requests in the repository, which will keep it cleaner. And the pull request that we can see will be new and would be like something that can be used. People can give their comment to. But if we keep on having issues, open issues, hundreds and thousands of it, I'm not sure what advantage do we get with that, keeping it on, because it would never let us make use of the appropriate issues. We want to actually address to an issue which was created by one of the user facing some challenges will be buried inside, and we may never be able to go to there.
Whatever. The GitHub feature of draft PRs, they call them, just to make it confusing. That works pretty well. You put it up, you mark it draft, it can't even be merged. The bot doesn't care about it. The editors don't have to look at it. So that gives you a way to put something up, get a stable number for it, have a place to point to for discussions, and it's less clutter if they never make it past draft stage. Stagnant drafts are actual drafts that just aren't being worked on, but they haven't been withdrawn. I have a 5-year-old draft for STIMD that I hope to eventually propose, but other stuff has to be done first. So it's sitting stagnant for the time being, but not withdrawn.
So I'm fine with people creating draft PRs, but I'm hesitant to give them a number for the exact reason we mentioned before, which is that as soon as people get that number, they just start spamming it around, and people start referring to it, start getting linked in articles, like it gets referred to by people in chats, and it gets linked to by other EIPs. And then if that draft PR never makes it through, then that's just like a permanently dead link all over the internet. And we see this often. Like, this is not like oh, this maybe happens. This happens very frequently, which is why I really want people to, if you get a number, it should be like your EIP should be like it should be on EIP's repository, like in master on the EIP site, so people can link to it and actually see it.
You'll find in the IEEE process, you'll find in the ANSI process that anybody can write up a draft and it'll be assigned a number. And there's a large number of documents with numbers that are pretty much dead, but they get a number right away. So,
I'm totally fine with that. It just, to get a number, I want, like, it should actually be in the EIP's repo. So submit an EIP, get it reviewed by an editor. Again, all you have to do is make sure the front matter is right, that you have the right sections, and you don't have anything that's not allowed in there. The rules are pretty simple for getting it through a draft.
Right, I just don't.
And then you have numbers.
I don't want that repo cluttered with ideas that are not going to go very far. Plus, it's a hassle to go through an editor for this very first stage, but it just puts more work on the editors. But I guess
right. Yeah, right. We are trying to get more editors on board, and the apprenticeship program is helping us a lot, like getting more community participation in reviewing the proposal. So we hope to get this process a little bit speed up, and maybe an author may not have to wait for years to get the proposal reviewed, and we should be fast tracking every proposal, at least the proposals which actually make sense and have chances to be a standard at one point of time.
RFC has 2 categories, draft and internet standard. That's it. Lots of things stay draft forever. Nobody cares about them.
Yeah, but you can't just get a number whenever you want to get a number. You have to go through the draft process. You have to get reviewed by the RFC editor. That's not, you can't just go to a URL and get the number.
Yeah.
There's kind of a pre-process of reviewing the draft.
What can I say? The RFC members tend to be much more professional than we are.
Well, we have just like 8 minutes left for this meeting. So if need be, we can bring this agenda item back into the next meeting, but let's quickly move over to cover the rest of the items. And I wanted to bring attention towards the spam issues. Those are being created in the issue section as well. I have listed the number here, 45564554. Maybe editors who have like closing authorities may look into those issues and close it. And it would be interesting to learn about how we can stop these kind of spam issues. Yeah, please go ahead.
So please, anytime you see these, click the little ... click report content. And then if you, sorry, I'm loading it right now so I can remember what the section you want to choose is. Click the ... hit report content. I want to report abusive content or behavior. I want to report spam, a user that is disrupting me or my organization's experience on GitHub, or a user who's using my personal information without my permission. And then user disrupting me or my organization experience by posting spam. And then just give they have like a 3-word description that says spam issue creation. We get a lot of these. Like I report 5 or 6 a day, and GitHub does actually ban these people. And so there is value in clicking that report. And if they get reported, their account gets deleted and the issues they created eventually go away. So yes, this is a real problem. Just if you see them, please report to GitHub. That's really all we can do, and then close it.
Well, that's a very good suggestion, because when I looked into that, it looked like someone is just trying to make an impression that they are contributing to Ethereum GitHub repository, and what they are doing is just spamming. So it's good that we should be reporting them.
Yeah, these are scammers, and they basically create a GitHub account and then they put it on a website, and it makes it look like, to the naive user, it makes it look like, oh, this is a legit developer, when really they're just a scammer trying to steal someone's money. So yes, please report them as soon as you can. It not only helps us keep the repo clean, it also costs them more time and effort to have to keep recreating these accounts, and it helps protect users from scams.
We'll do that. Thank you. The next item listed here is update EIP bot to add Greg Colvin as reviewer to notify his availability. From the discussion on the Discord chat, it appears that Greg is very much interested into reviewing the proposal, though he was not getting a notification. However, getting notification can also be done by just subscribing to GitHub. But if this is something that can be done with the help of bot, I'm just yeah.
Yeah, I don't need to update the bot. You just need to submit a PR to. There's a file. If someone remembers it offhand, please interrupt me. But I'm pulling it up right now. In the EIP's repo, there's just a file that you need to edit that has a list of who gets notified for which issue types.
Right. I think, Shashank, you are working on the EIP bot stuff with Alita. Do you think it is something that you can take care of?
Yes. Yeah, I'll take it.
So actually, so I'd recommend actually Greg take care of it so he can pick which ones he wants to do. So Greg, if you just go to that link I just pasted, just add your name, your GitHub handle to the whichever ones you want to be notified for. So like, for example, I'm only notified on core and networking EIPs, whereas Matt and Alex are notified for all EIP types.
Okay, easy enough. This whole thing has been very frustrating to me. For years, I've just been an editor, and then all of a sudden, by some automatic process, I wasn't an editor. And then it's been weeks of argument and discussion about how to become an editor again. It's sort of like I got automatically fired from a job for no particular reason and had to argue. So it's been unpleasant.
Well, I'm deeply regretting the inconvenience that you may have because of the changes that were brought in with the bot and the process, but we are trying to make everything go smoother, and that's why we organize this EIPIP meeting bi-weekly, and I hope to see you in upcoming meetings so we can have your input regularly, not only on the proposal and EIP editing side, but also the issues and challenges which are being faced by community in terms of submitting the proposal or any other process around the Ethereum ecosystem. Thank you for that. I think that is there. On the EIP inside, I'm just going to quickly go over there because we have just 3 minutes left. So I have shared the link to the December EIP Insight up till 15th of December. So far, we have new proposals, 4 new proposals. A few proposals are pulled back from stagnant to draft. There is no proposal in the last call. There is just one EIP that I especially wanted to make a mention of, the Arrow Glacier proposal that went into, I don't see that moving into final status. Is it something that we should do it real quick? I don't see.
The author just needs to submit a PR. So Tim, probably.
Yeah, I'll ping Tim about that because I don't find that proposal in my list. So I was wondering why is it not done yet? All right, so that's about EIP Insight. The details of the EIP number and what changes have been done in the past 14 days in the month of December is already documented, and you can find the link in the agenda for this meeting today. The next item is EIP Editor Apprenticeship Meeting. We had organized this meeting last December, and I have added the link to the recording. It was again a great session by Matt Bernard, and people had some questions that we tried to answer. It's great that new people who are trying to contribute as an editor, like obviously reviewer, is very helpful. Like we have seen quite a few engagement there. And yes, if for editors, if you have a specific thought about how to mature them to be an editor right from the apprentice, we would highly encourage those ideas. Do let us know.
The bot doesn't like it, but the detail seems to say that one of you people just fixes it. I don't know. But I just stuck my name in and tried to make a PR.
Oh yeah,
So
the bot.
the PR is there. Fix it.
Yeah, I'll get that approved in a minute. On the notes that Pooja mentioned, I recently moved houses, and so I'm way behind on my emails. And one of the things that got dropped of all the things that I do is EIP stuff. So if anyone wants to go through core EIPs, now is a great time to do so, because I haven't for like a week.
Thanks for the heads up, Micah. I know like Exec and Matt are already doing, I have received a couple of more interest from some developers of the Ethereum community. They would be probably joining from January, but I will like inform that if they can start contributing from now. But we hope to have you back very soon. I don't think that you're gonna make your escape from here. All right, let's move on. The last item is review action items from the previous meeting. One of the most important discussion from the last meeting was the placeholder for EIPV. I didn't check with Jamie so far, but I'm wondering if Matt may have the permissions to update that.
I would need someone to make me whatever role I can create repos in the Ethereum organization for a brief moment while I transfer the ownership. Otherwise, I don't think that we'll be able to do that.
Okay, if you can just ping me about that, I would be like taking it with the DevOps team and try to get it resolved. Sorry for the delay.
Thanks.
All right, that makes sense. And that also concludes our meeting today. I mean, anyone has any final comment, question, thought that they would like to bring up? Okay, I have one last question for the group. The next meeting is falling on December 29. Do we want to keep that meeting, or do we want to reconnect in the January, like the 12th of January?
I don't have a social life, so I don't care.
January.
All right. Like I'm assuming like 29th is like way close to the year end, and most of the people will be on vacation. So unless we have anything urgent to be discussed. Let's keep it tentatively on January 12th. But if something comes up that needs immediate attention, then we will have the meeting on 29th December. Yeah, by vacation means those who are working for an organization. Yeah. Let's see, let's keep it open. If we come across any issue that we want to address immediately, we'll have the meeting on 29th. Well, that's all for the meeting today. Thank you everyone for showing up, and I'm happy to see the number of participation today, and I hope that this continues in the next year as well. Have a good one, everyone.